Rosen's UN speech, Ely James, 70, The Time of Jacob's Trouble, Planet Earth's Generation Gog-Mageddon. By Ely James. Chapter 35, Rosen's UN speech, written January 19, 2025. Event held in New York, UN Assembly Address, Prime Minister Rosen of Israel. Date, August 10, year 2074. Testing the microphone and public address system. The media seats are those allocated full capacity. Let's begin. Well, here we are 3 years in a stretch after the Articles of Peace were signed. Ladies and gentlemen of this assembling body representing the nations, some of whom are complicit, I might add, in contributing to the terrors affecting our lives, fidgeting, and averting of the eyes and a muted chorus of groan sounded. Well, I scarcely have to head my briefing with a salient point headline, beginning with a question, stopping just short of quipping, and so I told you so, although I could. My nation, it is hard to say we choose the incessant shelling up north instead of the repeat and equivalent of America's 911 some 70 years ago on our Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, for you nations, some of whom are experiencing the tide of cresting waves of insurrection and civilian chaos, even riots. We are here to appeal to you for what we received from many of you, and that is international support for the necessitated continuance of the wartime retaliatory motion thrust upon us. To respond mightily lest the condition of our vacating northern territory, north of Golan and east to Syria who lends Hezbollah and Hamas support, lest this be made to represent Greater Jerusalem and any area of Israel besides. Beyond an impasse and concessions like Hussein's false ones who's orchestrated these things, we've arrived at the point of no return as you can deduce with your own eyes. The battle lies in an intended pincer movement and with 1/5 of our Tel Aviv skyline rearranged. Might want to say, and if Israel's forces hadn't acted as quickly and resoundingly as we have with a trenching mentality drawn against us through areas of Gaza and the Philadelphia corridor in southern Israel with express knowledge of Egypt of tunnel maze work labyrinths in subterranean grounds. I might add, such would have and was intended to render us akin to something of the Fort Masada against 1st century Rome and would have perilously foxholed Israelis without regard of others in homeland trenches instead of enjoying the freedoms and liberty that we extend to Israeli and Palestinian. Our enacted peace condition and ceasefire on borders wherein we've uncovered the many missile launches and weapons caches as this body is fully aware. With the enforcement of this body's Resolution 1701 to which Iran's proxy groups and Iran herself has turned a deaf ear in defiance of this assembly. With so many lives lost and rearranged so cruelly at peace treaties midterm, Prime Minister Mordecai Rosen switched on his feet to face certain persons. And so they and Mossad and Shin Bet intelligence were right again. He switched to refocus on center room again with bifocals resting on the bulb of nose as he referred to notations jotted against the podium and his paper. You can no longer put to question or ludicrous suspicion how that the Israeli Defense and Air Force acted as speedily as we have. And, my point is supported by evidence that you can for yourselves see. I ask this body, has your opinion about the two-state solution and of Nasser Abu Matter Hussein changed as a result of all of this? The much of what I leave unaddressed thus far this morning in the immediate hostage problem, today a terrible situation, and if we pull back and in front of only ghosts for partners for peace who are conspicuously absent from this body as they've either directly or indirectly the blood of Israel's citizens on their hands. From the terrible situation today shall the matter turn to an irreconcilable hemorrhage of a crisis tomorrow. Much to our dismay we're left in doubt of motives of a long-trusted ally, and how unprecedented. Whose claim is that the reduction of US presence from our portion of the world since pre-treaty times will remedially address the volatility and be unto a quelling. Because of threats of the formulation of Islamic Jihad against us and with a rigid finger on the article twice and then twice again repeated he strongly in characteristic form emphasized. For the Western world, a cessation of terror transmuted unto the present war condition from a leader who either only abhorrently knows Mideast life and policy or knows it perfectly well. While the national delegates switched about nervously weeks in their seats, he paused, took a drink of water, and richly filled up his lungs with fresh air before continuing. What a difference an election makes, unless to conclude. As the difference between President Wentworth's policy of troops withdrawal and of former President Benson and his committing of support for his disparate is the difference between the motive of terrorism and Israel's own motive. The Prime Minister, as composed in officious reserve as was he eloquent beyond refinement even when leaving his jotted notes, he continued before days later watching with the rest of the world a remarkable display of foreknowledge aired on media screens worldwide when Wentworth faced another irresolvable problem that felt like it could become world known. The man, by providence or something other, following a speech of his own whereby he more so bolstered the decision of the US troops withdrawal unto a retracted presence reduction of troops abroad than had he excoriated the Iranian-sponsored terrorists, he would also wear like the constricting necktie quite the conundrum and thereby clearly mark a profound and seismological shift of 1001 unconscionable degrees in transgressions. The Prime Minister with other nations like France, the UK, Taiwan and then Germany concurring while using variations of his phrase to lambaste Alexander, the American President with sibilance fires being tended to by emergency personnel respondents outside of Wentworth's own capital's windows, the camera and the mic was left rolling after his speech. And, largely seen in the reflection of his eyeglasses were two condemning items of correspondence. 'Twas Milne small man who said, we've experienced a replay of it and lamented sore, yet who could agonize a terroristic event occurring on September 11th the day before on the 10th? Folks, we are at the crux of incontrovertible change if we care about this great nation at all and I still do. The marvels of simple technology as, how tremendously astounding, the note that Alexander penned for addressing the people, well it wasn't absurd that he wrote it against the black and white of a different kind other than what supported warbling siren and red and blue flashing lights outside his window in a newspaper, but confounding the mind was how the brief commiseration note was. Lo and behold an oive at once. Written in today's edition of the New York Times was what only transpired next day. And in markhead specificity to dates under headings of a large article and specific events. A newspaper that certainly wouldn't have omitted what many people referred to as an abomination of desolation even taking place in very Jerusalem's new temple. At least the pants around camera did say, and as trusted as it might be aside from the astrology section, no paper could aside mansionly down to the house nanny detail prematurely date interrelated incidents by very players like so. The man Alexander Alastair Gale Wentworth, America's elected president, would blame technology's limited marvels and inerrancy. So he, marred by incredulity and the inability to buy any variation of a sound explanation to net himself or save face, looked a tad different addressing the people, a rarity as it was, without those tell-all betraying eyeglasses on. 70. The Time of Jacob's Trouble, Planet Earth Generation Gog-Mageddon. By Ely James.